See, you ever had a laugh turned into a punch? Picture this. My mom's 59th birthday front row ats, and the comedian points at me, says, "I must have been in a fire because I look older than my mom." The whole room explodes. I want to disappear, but I didn't. I made sure he never forgot that night. If you've ever been humiliated in public and wanted something that felt like real justice, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me. This one ends with a payoff that felt exactly like getting my dignity back. The theater smelled like buttered popcorn and perfume. My mom held my hand like she'd been holding it since I was small, expectant, excited. She'd been talking about this comedian for months, saving pennies, smiling at old clips on her phone. Today was her 59th birthday, and for once she wanted to be impulsive. "Front row," she said. "It's my birthday." She had that look, the kind that makes you fold to kindness. Felt the seat before I felt the laughter, the velvet, the small pocket of light from stage lamps. I had told her more than once that I didn't want front row. I said I wanted to enjoy the show. I said I didn't want to be a prop for a comic shock line. I said nervously, "I don't want to be roasted." She laughed, kissed my forehead, and said it would be fun. Inside my chest had a low, cold drumbeat the same sense. I got before a panic attack. Throat tight, palms damp, that small nauseous weight. I was 25, living with social anxiety, in therapy, carrying a fragile sort of confidence that could crack with a single look. In that dark theater, I felt in a way that was almost absurd, like it brought my worst nightmare with me. The comedian came out like a warm spotlight. He prowled the stage, eyes scanning, voice sharp as a switchblade. He liked quick hits, roast, laugh, move on. At first it was safe. Then he glanced to the front row and paused, eyes landing on me. I tried to make myself small, a bad reflex, chin down, hands folded like I could disappear into the velvet. "Who's your lovely daughter?" he asked my mom. She beamed. He laughed like he'd found a prop. He leaned in, and the words came out like he was flipping a switch. "Looks like she's been in a fire. She looks older than you." The room exploded. Not a few laughs, a wave. I felt that sound hit me physically, like a gust of wind that shoved me forward. I remember the heat rising behind my eyes before I realized I was crying. Not silent tears, a tidal spill. My face burned, my throat tightened, and the world narrowed down to the sound of other people's amusement. He moved on like it was nothing. I wanted the floor to swallow me. On the walk home, my mom tried to hug me with words. "It's just a joke," she said. He was going for shock. "He said the same thing to half the crowd." She touched my hair like she could right the wrong by proximity. She told me I looked young, that I was attractive. But every reassurance felt like paper over a cut. My therapist had taught me grounding exercises, name 5 things, breathe, remind yourself the feeling will pass, and yet each attempt to soothe myself was interrupted by the replay. His laugh, the point, the room. I have always been sensitized to small slights. When I was younger, a classmate's shrug became a story that lived in me for years. Social humiliation is a compact. It tells you the world has decided you're less than, and then gives you the evidence in other people's eyes. This time, a stranger's one-liner had packaged decades of insecurity into a single, bright, brutal moment. That evening, in the quiet of my room, I sat with the hurt, until it settled into something slower and hotter, not just shame, but a rising gradational anger. Not the reckless, destructive kind I'd once fantasized about in the small, shameful moments after being hurt. This was a clearer thing. I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted to reclaim my story and to make sure the person who'd weaponized laughter had to face the consequences for using another human being as a punchline. I pulled out my phone. No scream action, no threats, just a plan that fit who I am. Careful, methodical, public, and impossible to ignore. First, I wrote down everything. Exact words, timestamps, my mom's reactions, witnesses, the woman 2 seats down who'd been laughing a little too loudly, the man in the second row who had filmed part of the set. Writing made it real and organized. Page after page, I poured the humiliation into ink. Second, I reached out. I emailed the venue, concise and calm. I asked for the comedian's management contact and explained what happened. The tone was neither pleading nor vengeful. It was deliberately a professional complaint. This performer targeted me and publicly humiliated me in a way that felt like emotional harm. I requested any recordings. I asked if they had policies about audience safety and performer conduct. Third, and most important, I chose my platform. I could have screamed into the dark of my private feeds. Instead, I wrote a short, carefully worded piece, not an attack, but a narrative. I outlined what I felt, why it had hurt, and how a public space had become a place that rewarded humiliation. I titled it plainly, "What Happens When a Comedian Uses a Person for Shock?" I posted it on a popular forum and cross-posted to my social accounts with one rule: no derogatory comments, no calls for harassment. I wanted accountability, not mob justice. People read it. They shared. A woman who'd been at the show DM'd me a blurry clip 20 seconds where the comedian's finger pointed, the crowd's reaction clear as a bell. Another viewer a local theater critics mailed asking if they could include it in a piece about ethics in comedy. An ex-comedian turned columnist reached out with a short, sharp line. "This happens more than you think." The noise built. Not viciousness, not a hunt, a chorus. Stories from others, people older and younger who felt like they'd been turned into jokes. Comments didn't scream cancel. They said, "That made me uncomfortable. Thank you for saying it out loud." Then the venue wrote back. The manager apologized, said they were reviewing footage, and asked the comedian to speak with them. The comedian's manager, the one I'd contacted through the venue, sent a terse email proposing a private apology. I declined. I wanted transparency. I wanted the conversation public so the next person in that chair would be treated differently. A week later, the comedian posted a video, not a roast, not a joke, but an apology. He called his words attempted shock and said he misspoke. The important part wasn't the apology's tone. It was the consequence. His upcoming tour dates were paused by the venue chain. A few podcasts rescinded invitations. A popular comedy collective posted a thread about consent and audience respect. The man who'd made a living off the sharp laugh had to sit in the soft, plain light of accountability. When I saw it, my hands were shaking. Not because of triumph alone this was complicated, but because justice had come in a way that aligned with what I wasn't willing to become. I didn't want him destroyed. I wanted him to stop turning people into props. I wanted the next 25-year-old in the front row to feel safer. The relief that followed wasn't cinematic. It wasn't fireworks. It was quieter, a slow unclenching of the jaw I hadn't known had kept so tight. My mom sat with me and watched the apology video. She squeezed my hand. Her eyes were wet but steady. "You did something right," she said. "You turned that hurt into something that might help others." My therapist called it assertive redress, standing up through channels that restored dignity without becoming cruel. The sensation I remember most was this: the next time I sat in a crowd, I felt like I carried a shield I'd built myself piece by piece. The moral isn't that public shaming is satisfying. The moral is that there are ways to respond when someone weaponizes your humiliation. You can retreat, you can lash out, or you can choose a path that reclaims your story and pushes the culture to do better. If you want to be vindicated, make sure your vindication uplifts, not destroys. Make sure it targets the behavior, not the person's life. If this story hit you, hit like and tell me in the comments, what would you have done? If you've ever been publicly humiliated and turned it into something positive, share your story. We're listening. Subscribe for more real redemption stories, and remember, your story matters and your dignity is worth defending.